Thank you, Madam Speaker. I live on Washington Street in Mount Pleasant. It is the main thoroughfare through the town. It's spring, and it's known for the pink tulip trees that line the street in my neighborhood. They always bloom at the time the legislature is to adjourn. As I backed out of the driveway on Sunday and headed west for Des Moines, I looked at the trees and thought this was going to be my last week at the legislature. I've been making this trip for 24 years, and each time the tulip trees were in bloom. I was elected to the House in 1994 as part of the class that included Mary Masher, Todd Taylor, and Dan Hoosman. 2 years previously, I had suffered defeat running against Governor Tom Vilsack for the state senate. And 2 years later, I had a chance to run for the House, and I have been able to serve in this chamber ever since. When I got to pick a desk as a freshman member, I chose this middle seat here in the front row. I sat between Joe Kramer and Phil Terrell. Phil could have been one of those people that Dave Yepsen would refer to as a moss pack of the legislature, the long-term members who had significant influence over the proceedings in the chamber. Phil was a real jokester who always picked on the freshmen, me included. He would leave messages like, "Call Mr. Lyon at this phone number." And when you called, you always received an answer, "Hello, this is the Blank Park Zoo." Joe, sitting at this desk, was a real gentleman and had the uncanny skill of placing his head on this desk during long debates. But he'd raise up and he never missed a vote. In their own ways, they taught me a lot about how to be an effective legislator for the people I represented. Early on, I was very involved in transportation issues and the work of the Justice Systems budget. But in 1998, my role in the legislature changed. It was time for Speaker Ron Corbett to decide on committee chairs after the election, and I was hopeful that I could get one. But before those decisions were made, my wife Carmen and I went on vacation with Rich Arnold and Cheryl to Las Vegas. So there I was in the middle of Caesar's Palace, and you know how it is. Mr. Pacello, telephone, Mr. Pacello. Well, for me it said, Representative Dave Heaton, telephone. And my first thought was, who died? When I got to the phone, it was Speaker Corbett, and he said, "How would you like to be the Human Services Budget Sub-Chair?" With that call, my journey into the world of human services began. This may be a surprise to some of my colleagues, but my selection as co-chair was not warmly received by many in the human services community. What does a restaurateur know about this budget? Was asked by more than one. And it was a fair question, because in my first 4 years, I really wasn't involved in those issues. Representing Mount Pleasant, I understood the importance of mental health, and I was interested in addressing juvenile justice issues. But I was definitely a newcomer to human services, and I needed some help to learn about what this budget covered. Luckily for me, Speaker Corbett helped me to make a connection with Arlene Dayhoff. Mrs. Dayhoff was one of his constituents who had also been the longtime chair of the Council of Human Services. And over the next 2 years, Mrs. Dayhoff and I went across the state visiting programs and facilities to help me learn what this budget was all about. She opened doors for me, giving those involved in human services the signal that this new guy was okay. Based on her example, I'm going to spend the summer taking my staff person, Natalie Ginty, out to introduce her to as many of the providers as possible. Mrs. Dayhoff also taught me a very important lesson. It's not about what you do in Des Moines that matters. It's what you do to impact those who deliver the services and the people we serve. If you can't realize that, you are just a numbers person. She taught me that you have to have a soul in this business. Mrs. Dayhoff's words have stuck with me all these years, and I am thankful for her help, her advice, and her friendship. That first session as chair was a real learning period for me and our committee. I know that some of you get a little jerky if your budget meeting looks like it might go over an hour, but in 1999, the Human Services Budget Subcommittee met for 2.5 to 3 hours every day, 4 days a week. We also had a van waiting for us every Monday afternoon to take the committee to meet the service community in Des Moines. Now that was a real budget subcommittee schedule. Our committee put together a very good bill that first year, taking input from all the members. And before we were able to debate it, I had to explain the bill to the appropriation chair, Representative Dave Millage. That was not a pleasant experience, especially as a new chair, since Millage went through every NOVA with a fine-tooth comb and would then cross-examine you over what was in your bill. Once we finally got to the floor, the fun continued as debate took over a day and a half before it was done. And what happened once the vote was over? Tornado warning for Polk County, and everybody went downstairs into the basement and tunnels to wait it out. And I sat down there, I was hoping that this was not an omen of what was to come in my career as a budget sub-chair. Those first few years as chair taught me several important lessons. We had a divided government during that period, and I learned that in order to get things accomplished, you have to reach across the aisle and find common ground with the other party. One of the best examples of how to make this happen actually occurred before I became chair. In 1997, Representative Hubert Hauser led an interim committee learning to make major changes in DHS. The interim produced Community Empowerment, Early Childhood Iowa now, and our program to help preschool kids and their families achieve success. That panel had a subcommittee that looked at our DHS institutions and what their role would be going into the 21st century. Hubert asked me to be a part of this, and serving with people like Elaine Zamoniak, state senator, and Representative Ro Faggy. It was a fascinating way to spend the fall going across the state to different facilities. What made this experience so special was that we traveled together on these visits. The time in the van allowed us to get to know each other, talk about what we've seen on our visits, and find areas of agreement on a number of issues. I have always been thankful to Hubert for asking me to play a small role in that process. That interim was the first of many times over the next 12 years where I got to work with my friend, Representative Ro Faggy. Working together, we were able to help change the focus of how we address children and families in need. Moving to community-based initiatives, addressing child abuse, child welfare, children's mental health, developing the brain injury waiver, and consumer-directed care. Ro is still active in Cedar Rapids on these issues and others, and I am glad I can still call him my friend. One of the issues that has consistently been an area of bipartisan work during my time has been mental health. When I arrived here in 1995, we had 100 different mental health systems in this state. Each county had the authority over its program, and the state had another system for those who did not have legal settlement. In some counties, if you needed help, you had to appear before the Board of Supervisors to make sure you were getting your services. In 2012, we adopted the Mental Health Redesign Plan led by Representative Renee Schulte. There were others who, behind the scenes, helped make that systemic change happen. Ben Kahn from Magellan helped lay out the vision for what we would pass, and Representative Scott Recker used his position as Appropriations Chair to make sure we had the resources to implement the plan. Director Chuck Palmer played a very important role in bringing the House and Senate together in negotiating a common agreement to the redesign plan. Iowa's mental health system today is light years beyond where it was when I became a member. And we again improved the system significantly this year. And all of this happened because we worked together for the common goal. During my time here in this state has also taken great steps in addressing the needs and services for seniors. Madam Speaker, many current members probably do not know the integral role you played in expanding access to assisted living across the state and making it affordable. Our state has pioneered ways to make this type of care available to lower-income seniors. You also led the way in expanding access to health care in rural Iowa by introducing and passing legislation that gave nurse practitioners the ability to prescribe and bill for their services. We were the first state in the nation to allow independent practice of nurse practitioners. The debate took the whole day on that issue. The desk was right behind me, up the way there. There was a lot of resistance from the medical community on your proposal, but you stood firm and defended your proposal, and the bill passed and later became law. Because of that, we've been able to grow the number of providers in rural Iowa and ensure that folks in our communities have access to health care, either in person or through the growth of telehealth. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for your leadership on these issues and your friendship and support. I am also very proud of the work we have done as a body to help families in need. One example is the creation of residential facilities in Sioux City and Cedar Rapids that allow moms to keep their families intact as they get substance abuse treatment. That support has been instrumental in keeping many and helping many to battle addiction and build better lives for themselves and their children. There are so many people to thank. I want to begin with the voters of Southeast Iowa who have sent me here 12 times to be their voice in Des Moines. I have always kept them as the focus of my work here, and I hope I have served them honorably to the best of my ability. You don't run for office by yourself. Having a family is critical for success, and for me, it's definitely been true. When I was here at the Capitol, my wife Carmen was back in Mount Pleasant running my restaurant. Our restaurant. Sorry, Carmen. My daughter Mary spent one session as my clerk, and my son David was very involved in my campaigns. And I want to thank them for all of your support. If you're going to be successful as a member, you need a good clerk, and I've been blessed with many good clerks, like Joe Benny, who's not here today, but Phyllis Toy, been my clerk for the last 8 years. Thank you for your service to me and our help with our constituents back home. The friendships you make with members here go well beyond your time in this chamber. I am so thankful for people like Representative Chuck Gibb, Lance Horbach, Rich Arnold, two-dog pack. We had a great time, both socially and legislatively. Representative Linda Miller was the perfect partner as Chair of Human Resources, keeping me out of trouble and being a voice of reason as we worked on budgets over the years. I also had tremendous staff and support. Carrie Malone, Natalie Ginty on our caucus staff, Patty Finero, Jess Benson, Hannah Beach, Ken Holmes in LSA, John Pollock, who's retired, and Sue Lordall were also very helpful over the years. The departments have been very helpful during my time working in this area, even when we may have not been headed in the same direction. But I want to especially thank Jennifer Vermeer, Chuck Palmer, Kevin Concannon, and Don Herman for their willingness to work with me, even though it might not have been exactly what they wanted to do. I would also like to thank some very special people that serve in our state government, the DHS liaisons. This work is one of the most difficult jobs in state government, being able to understand, negotiate, and advocate for a broad-based and complicated budget. Those that I have worked with are Carla Folsom-McHenry, Kate Walton, Alicia O'Brien, Molly Kottmeyer, Julie Fleming, Jennifer Harbison, Paige Thorson, and Maria Bentroy. Several of them are still with us today in different roles. Kate, Carla, and Julie serve us in the lobby. Molly's the assistant to the Supreme Court, Chief Justice. Jennifer is now a liaison with the University of Iowa Hospitals, and Paige is with the governor. I'd like to also thank my Vice Chair, Rob Taylor, and Joel Fry, who's been very helpful, both of them, in coming and helping me this year, and my ranking member, Lisa Heddens, who I think can't be here this afternoon. But I want to thank her very especially. We've worked together for many, many years, whether I was a ranking member or the chair. We always seemed to move in the right direction. Lastly, I'd like to especially thank my good friend and confidant, Brad Troe. Brad Troe served as my staff person for 20 years. We have had a great relationship. Brad understood exactly where I was coming from, shared my vision, and supported me. He has kept me focused and understood on what I wanted to do. He has counseled me on the difficulties I have had with negotiations with the process. Brad and I understand that what we are trying to do is improve the conditions for those who are affected by our appropriations, the elderly, disabled, single moms, and those with child care. He's been my partner through it all, and I will miss working with him. I know I'm going to miss serving the people of Iowa. Having the ability to make a positive difference in people's lives has been the driving force in my life as a teacher, in the restaurant business, and as a state representative. It's going to be an interesting transition because it will be easier knowing that this chamber has people in both parties who are committed to making Iowa a better place for everyone. In closing, I want to leave you with some thoughts. In working on human services issues, it's not enough to sit back and watch from afar. We have to get out there, see the work that's being done, and talk with those involved. Sometimes it's not the easiest thing to see, but it is necessary. You see, it's not about the numbers on the balance sheet, it's about the lives that we impact. As legislators, we have to understand that our role is to create a system that allows people to rise, be more human, Show more sympathy for those who are trying to rise. Align yourself with culturally disheartened. Be on the side of Main Street and not Wall Street. Take a new and honest look at impediments to the American dream and figure out why people don't feel so upwardly mobile anymore. Be for populism without the bitterness, and patriotism minus mindless nationalism. We have to recover our sense that we are part of this community that's larger than our political position. We all, despite our disagreements, have shared interests and values. To quote Peggy Noonan, we need to keep this country together, keep it up and operating, and give it a sense of peace with itself. The crisis is our increasing disunity and the thinning of a shared sense of the national dream. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. God bless Iowa. That's all I have, and goodbye.